Hello, you're listening to Career Conversations, the latest series that's part of the Table Talk podcast from Food Matters Live. I'm Alicia Roche, a chef and food journalist, and together we'll meet experts in cooking, mixology, the environment, psychology, branding, social media, and all sorts, as we learn about the surprisingly varied roles that go way beyond the kitchen. My guest today is inspiring mum of two Sophie Baron, whose plant-based baby food startup Mamamade went stratospheric during COVID and is now the fastest growing baby food business in the UK. She talked to us just days after securing a massive 1.5 million in funding and was incredibly honest about the hard work involved to get there and how it's often the people with the craziest career paths who end up making the best business people. I'll be back at the end with some key info about why a career as a food founder is a long road ahead and how much you can expect to earn. But for now, settle in and enjoy the podcast. Tell me about your children. I hope they love eating what you make them.
We were joking at one point that my son Arthur in particular was like a science experiment because he's pretty much only ever eaten Mamamade. But he seems to be doing very well.
First of all, congratulations, because we're chatting to you at a very exciting time for the business. Tell us about this big funding you've just received.
Yeah, it was really exciting. So basically as a way to activate the community that had been growing around Mamamade, the product started from my kitchen. It was just me in the beginning, and it really grew over Instagram. And seeing how much it was really helping people and seeing the responses that they were giving, not just to myself, but to other parents who were buying the product, a real community started to grow around it. And when it came time to needing some more investment in order to achieve our goals as a business, thinking about different ways to raise that money, one of the ones that we kept coming back to was crowdfunding as a way to activate the people that love Mamamade, bring them on board as a formal part of the journey. And so we just closed that round at the end of the year, so in December, and we brought on about 300 new investors. And with that money, we're now able to extend our reach, come out with new products, and just bring more Mamamade to more people.
It's absolutely amazing. Congratulations to you all. So at the beginning, you've mentioned that you have learnt this all as you go along. You're not sort of a natural businesswoman, even though you're very successful now. Were you ever scared it wasn't going to work out for you?
Yes, is the short answer. I'm very fortunate to have had a lot of sort of mentorship and coaching from other, particularly women, I would say, in the startup world. There are people who are either have built businesses themselves or they've just really dedicated themselves to supporting women in business. And something that I've learned from them is that failure may be an outcome of this. It's very possible that it will be, but it's not to be something to fear. And so learning to kind of neutralize failure has been a really important lesson, because then what happens is you can take more risks, but you also appreciate everything that you're learning along the way.
I think that's a really good message, that you're looking at your failures in a positive way. You're always learning. We've had some really incredible young female founders on this podcast who've talked a little bit about a feeling that they weren't being taken seriously in some of those big meeting rooms when money was on the table. Have you had any experience of things like that?
Definitely. I think the fact that I'm a woman raising money for a brand focused on mothers in particular, it was a real journey to get to this stage and to be taken seriously. Definitely the first round that we did, I would get a lot of questions around, oh, but the market can't be very big, or, a woman, they don't really need this. Who are you to do this business? All these kinds of questions that I kept thinking like, wow, they have no idea the spending power that women have. They have no idea the decision making, how women, particularly in heterosexual couples and families across the UK, which is still the majority, that 90% of the purchasing power is with the woman. So why is it wrong to target women? Why does that make out it's 50% of the population? So I definitely get a lot of questions like that. I'm not going to lie and say it's not discouraging, but learning to kind of accept that no's are also part of the process. And again, having benefited from a lot of coaching and mentorship, learning that kind of, welcome the no's, because each no brings you a little bit closer to the next yes, and all these things that you can kind of remind yourself of. But I've certainly experienced that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm just not being taken seriously at all.
I love how positive you are. I hope it rubs off on me after this. How did you get good at walking into those rooms, or how did you get better and better at it, walking into those rooms and thinking, I've got the confidence to do this, I know what I'm talking about?
Listen, I'm not going to pretend that every time I'm so positive. I've definitely felt knocked back. But I think you have to ask yourself, where are you looking for the validation to come from? And I started to find that I would feel a lot better in the meetings when I sort of had this feeling of like, I don't need this to succeed because I've got validation where it counts, which is from my customers, from my community, from my team, and really seeing it as an opportunity for the other party is like, you know what, I'm giving them the chance to get in on Mamamade, like something that started from my head in my kitchen in my house. This is really an opportunity for them.
So let's go back to the very beginning. It was literally you in your kitchen whipping up stuff in food processors.
Yeah, it was just me. And then I brought on a helper, but still she wasn't full time or anything like that. And we cleared out the spare room in my house. We had like 6 chest freezers and everything was being sent from home.
Wow. So it must have been pretty chaotic at home at the time.
Yeah, it was. And when it reached peak chaos and I was like, I cannot look at another cardboard box. That's when we started to think about what the sort of exit strategy was for getting out of my house and into a proper facility. But yeah, it worked for a while out of my house. It's funny looking back because I remember buying that first freezer, which was like a 300-pound freezer or something, and just thinking like, if this all fails, will I be able to sell this freezer? And yeah, then we had 6 of them. So It was just sort of gradually growing and taking up a lot of space. And now, thankfully, we have a bed back in the spare room.
Much more calm. Although you're a mum as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I've got 2. So Liba is my daughter and she's 4. And she was sort of the inspiration behind this, or my journey with being her mom was really the inspiration behind this. And I found becoming a mother quite difficult. The transition was something that I think no one could have possibly prepared me for, and learning to kind of adjust to parenting. At the time, everything was so positive and so shiny on social media in particular, and no one was really saying like, yeah, it's okay to find this really difficult. And that was sort of the feeling behind Mamamade, and then wanting better food for her than what I was finding on the shelf. And then last December, I had my son, Arthur, and so he's just over 1 now.
Oh, 1 of each. Congratulations. One of the things I really love about your brand is that the food you're creating for babies and toddlers is also reflective of what's going on in adult food trends. So, for example, we're big into gut health and foods that can help you concentrate better or high protein. Was this a kind of business strategy?
As you say, we're all becoming a bit more knowledgeable around how food is connected to health and how what we eat can impact not just our physical well-being, but our mental well-being. And so naturally, when it came time to feed my daughter solids, I wanted her to have the goodness that can come from really good food, understanding that gut health is important even from a young age. And so seeing that disconnect, as an adult, the quality of food now available to us as convenience products, seeing the healthy options now available. And then when you look on the supermarket shelves for babies and it's more or less goo and it's extremely high in sugar and extremely processed. So I think it grew out of that, less trend driven as much as the kind of knowing that babies deserve better, knowing that parents deserve convenience that doesn't need to mean compromising.
Do you think there's such a thing as a natural gift for being a business person, or is it a learned skill?
That's a really good question. I think there are certain instincts people have that I don't necessarily think I have for business, but I think there's a lot of traits that are required in business that you can learn. For example, resilience, the kind of positivity as I was sort of going on about in the beginning, those are all learned traits. I think everything's learnable. And something else I've learned is you can always then bring in the right person to support you where your weaknesses are. I'm a strong proponent of, if you have an idea, to go for it, because there are people that have those skill sets to complement whatever your skill set is.
I love it, Sophie. You're a doer. Not like me, you're a doer. Let's talk about how you got here in the first place, because you actually have a really interesting career path, maybe a bit unexpected, not at all linear.
Yeah, non-linear is the best way to describe it. I went to university in New York. So I'm from New York originally. I studied Russian and French. I spent some time abroad and I really wanted to go into writing. And so I thought magazines would be the kind of work I wanted to do. So I had loads of internships. I ended up at Vogue in New York as an editorial assistant to one of the top editors there.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop you here. Vogue in America, are we talking Anna Wintour levels or someone up there?
Someone towards the very top of the masthead. It wasn't her, but it was someone very much at the top of the masthead at the time.
But that's amazing. Even getting a foot in the door at Vogue is very tricky. How did that one come about?
That was a lucky thing about going to university in New York, I would say, is just being there at the right time. And this was back in the day when you didn't have to pay for interns. And so that was also a privilege that I was able to take an unpaid internship. And I just worked really hard as an intern. I mean, I think I probably put my internship ahead of my schoolwork. I sometimes have regrets about not making more of my time at Columbia in New York. And I remember one day someone just sort of peeked their head over and said, "Oh, are you looking for a full-time job after graduation? Because this editor happens to be hiring." And because I had been there and I sort of knew everybody and I knew the ropes, it was more or less an easy hire. So it was a very lucky, and it was a lot of privilege.
Well, I think we make our own luck in life. That's what my great belief. I think there's luck where opportunity comes a knocking, but you've got to be the person that opens the door to it. You're in New York, you're studying, but did you ever think you'd become a businesswoman?
Never. Genuinely, I thought, okay, I've got my dream job. I've got my foot in the door and I'm just going to keep going from job to job to job at Vogue. And then I realized, I didn't feel like it was the path for me. And I was feeling a bit lost and a bit burnt out. And I really wanted to get back to the work I had done in college in languages. I kind of missed that world, I suppose, a bit more international, a bit more exciting. And so I applied on a whim for a job in Paris that I knew would sponsor a visa. They were like, "Oh, well, you've worked at Vogue, so we know you can do anything." So they gave me the job, and I worked for over 2 years in Paris. And that kind of brought me to this side of the pond, and that ultimately led me to London.
Oh, so your French is really très bien.
I mean, it's been now, almost 8 years I've been in London, so I don't know. But at the time, it was very good.
Well, I hope Vogue has repaid the favour. Have you been featured in Vogue yet?
Not yet, but we'll see. The baby food angle might not be the most wide-reaching sell, but
these Vogue readers, they have babies in the end. Anna Wintour, if you're listening, you know what to do. Let's talk about a big break moment for you. Was there a time or a person that helped kind of propel things along for you, or was it just the pandemic?
I like to say that the pandemic gave us a nice tailwind. It sort of flattened a lot of learnings around the importance of frozen or the importance of delivery and subscription. But we would never have gotten the kind of traction that we did without getting in with certain celebrity moms. And that was purely based on kind of organic Instagram content. So having content that reached these moms, and they would reach out to me on DM saying, "Oh, this brand looks really interesting. This product looks really great. Can I try some?" And gifting them product, and then them reaching their audiences really kind of built out Mamamade's audience. So
you can't go mentioning celebrities without name dropping a little bit, please. I know you've got Rochelle Humes is a fan. Anyone else?
Millie McIntosh was huge for us when she first posted. Lucy McNamara from The Only Way is Essex, also still a huge supporter of Mamamade. So having the support of these women was really crucial to getting us kind of out there.
I think there's an intrigue about celebrities on social media about how much they actually do drive sales. I guess there's a difference between someone who's paid to say something about a product and someone who just genuinely loves it, right?
That's 100% it. So even now that we do have the budget to be paying influencers, we always start with a gifted box, because if they don't like it, it's just not going to generate the kind of content that is going to drive sales. So we need them to be true fans before we will even consider paying them.
Definitely. Now, talking of social media, Instagram was kind of essential for you in driving your brand at the beginning. But social media can give off this impression that you're this attractive, go-getting businesswoman whose life is just fabulous every day. What's the reality?
Yeah, I try to keep things as authentic as possible for that reason. And we try not to be too shiny, which is kind of what I find exciting about a platform like TikTok, which is much more kind of accommodating, I would say. It's the kind of grittier, spur of the moment kind of content. But it's an amazing way to connect with audiences. It's a free way to test things out as well, see what messaging works, see what formats people respond to, what they don't. Yeah, there'd be no Mamamade without these free platforms.
As a mother whose business is all about baby food and toddler food, how do you separate work life and home life? Where do you find the balance?
Oh, gosh. I mean, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because my work is my life and I'm in business with my husband, and my kids are obviously sort of like test subjects for my food. So, but having kids also forces you to have that complete stop at the end of the day. And if I'm putting my daughter to bed, I'm putting my daughter to bed and I'm not on my phone checking emails, and it's kind of forcing me to unwind. And certainly on the weekends, I don't really do any work, but I also just accept that that's kind of the stage of the journey I'm at right now is that kind of hard grind, and not to glorify it, but also just not to pretend that I can get to this stage without a lot of really hard work.
Yeah, I think that's an important message too, because as I say, there are some young students listening who probably think it all looks very glamorous and you just post pictures and then suddenly you're an overnight millionaire, but reality is hard work. Do you think now is an exciting time for someone who is young and wants to be a founder?
I really do. I think we're in a really exciting time for business in general. First of all, because there are all of these free tools for marketing. I mean, if you look at people who are just starting like small businesses, like maybe an Etsy shop, and yet TikTok allows them to reach billions of people. And then if you do go down the route of raising money, we're at a time where there happens to be quite a lot of money out there that you can sort of raise from. So I think there's too much opportunity at the moment, like not to give it a go.
What have been some, let's call them valuable mistakes that you've made along the way?
Oh, a lot. Lots and lots. Let's see where to start. The first, I would say, is thinking that anybody out there knows your business better than you do. There are a lot of people that can help. So that's not to say don't get anyone's advice. That's not true. But when you do get other people's advice, or you do get outside consultants or outside anybody, they're not going to know your business better than you. And no matter what they say, they're not the ones to make decisions. I think I've given a lot of free rein, let's say, to people who kind of talked a big talk and made me think that, they would be the silver bullet to make Mamamade, massive, and then realizing actually like they don't know my business the way I know my business. The other big lesson I've learned is around hiring and kind of hiring strategically. And we've unfortunately, had people join Mamamade who weren't right, and it's not their fault. They're not bad at their jobs. It was just kind of non-strategic hires of kind of trying to fix one problem and maybe not thinking like, what will this role need to look like in 6 months and 12 months and 18 months. And so that's something that we're really doing more of now is actually building out an organization that makes sense rather than just constantly kind of putting out fires. Those are kind of my two big learnings, both about working with other people, I guess.
No, both valuable lessons for sure. You're working so hard and things are growing and growing and there's so much spotlight on what you're doing and it's all fantastic. Is the goal to just keep working and working, or please tell me you have some dream in the future to go and jack it all in and live on a desert island?
As soon as we raised that first round of funding for Mamamade, it stopped being a kind of lifestyle business in the sense that it was no longer going to be a business that would sustain itself, that we could just take a cut from and live happily. Like we have shifted gears at Mamamade to now be building something for an eventual kind of liquidation event. And that is what we're working towards. And we are sort of laser focused on doing. And I spend a lot of time saying, when I exit Mamamade, this is what I'm going to do. This is, we're building towards something. So I guess that's definitely the case. I've got a long list of things I'd like to do and to focus on in the next chapter. This is one chapter.
Well, I look forward to seeing you on that super yacht sometime in the future. It's me again. That was the lovely Sophie, who was very humble for someone who I have no doubt is going to be a multimillionaire one day. She's a big believer in staying positive and seeing the good in every single mistake, which I love. Now for the all-important information I promised you at the start. As a food founder, you're going to need some startup cash, about 10 grand. If you don't have it and can't get local grants, think about crowdfunding like Sophie did. Platforms like Crowdcube, Seedrs, and Kickstarter are all good ones worth trying. But do make sure you have an excellent, passionate, watertight and convincing pitch with no mistakes. If you don't believe in your own idea, who else will? Find someone whose business you admire and see who they're following on social media. Fill up your feed with advice and inspiration instead of just cats misbehaving. Thank you again to the lovely Sophie for speaking with me, and good luck to you and your team as you expand. And thank you for listening. Until next time, goodbye.